We have planted the seeds and watered the spring football garden with yet another edition of Spring Football Has Sprung. Eugene Oba with you on this opening night of the third season of the United Football League, the UFL. So great to see you. What an outstanding energy that we have been seeing all this week and really throughout these past few weeks. And finally, we are here. And we're going to talk about that. I'm also going to talk about what could have been the case had Idaho been in this league. Could we have had the Boise Stallions? I'm going to talk a little bit about that, all the westward expansion that has been bandied about. So you guys have been blowing up the Spring Football Has Sprung Twitter on that. I'll talk also the improvements of the Birmingham Stallions, the improved fortunes, which I think is great. I'm also going to we're also going to debut our Pick'em segment where I will provide my predictions on who I believe are going to win week one. And then I'm going to talk about why I'm delighted that Daryl Johnston is no longer in this league. But I am very delighted to have all of you here with us on this show. And boy, I know that Louisville are very, very delighted to have their team. If the numbers that we are going to see later tonight on Fox are anything to go by with these crowds and with the weather holding up, boy, it is going to be a real raucous crowd out there in Louisville. I mean, the vibes are going to be phenomenal, and you would love to see that because think about last year with Houston and the Battlehawks out in Houston. Oh boy. I mean, remember that silly music that was played and the empty crowds and the kind of sort of days of our lives type drama with the CBA and, the Rocks played and not, working or, I think it was weather related, but all kinds of drama. The vibes last year were off. This stuff is going to be exciting. You do have two rookie coaches in AJ McCarron and Chris Redmond. Those guys are greener than the Kings uniforms. And when you have people that are so green in this coaching, then you need to rely on your coordinators, and coordinators can make a huge difference in this, as the Detroit Lions found out. Now, again, there is going to be a real excitement in this city. You've got a new market. There's going to be, I think, this has the potential of being a very high upside market. And that is something that was noted as much on the series premiere yesterday by John Lewis.
Here in Louisville, I mean, we're excited with the Kings, and there is a lot of buzz around town about this team. So I hate it for the Memphis Showboats, who ended up being kind of the Louisville Kings, but it's certainly been the game here in Louisville, and I think they're going to get a lot more attention in Louisville than they were getting in Memphis the last few years. When you look at the Metro, everything that they wanted when they started to talk about expansion, Louisville checked every box that they looked at. Being able to draw from a fan base, having the right venue, that number one, and that Lou City and Racing Louisville, the USL soccer team and the NWSL team that play at Lynn Family Stadium. I talked to them behind the scenes before, when these talks started to go, and they were really excited about the proposition because there are a lot of soccer fans in this town, and there are a lot of soccer fans that were worried that these guys are going to tear up our field. So we'll find out.
Now, the one thing that could very well give some bit of pause is that these guys are, again, rookie coaches. And when the league was the XFL in 2023, they had some rookie coaches. You had Terrell Buckley, Hines Ward, and Rod Woodson. All right. Brahmas Guardians, Orlando Guardians, and the Vipers. And the combined record of those coaches, the combined record of those rookie coaches, even though they had been position coaches, the combined record was 6-24. So the odds are kind of sort of against having a rookie coach. Now, at least you could say that those guys were position coaches. Redmond and McCarron are not. And at the end of the day, you have to think about this. What matters in this league, in a league like this, especially if you want to survive, is that the quality of the football has to be on point. I mean, forget about all the trappings of having A-list celebrities performing at halftime and that sort of thing. Forget about all of that. What needs to happen ultimately, especially if you're going to draw casual fans, is that the quality of the football has to shine. The 2001 iteration of the XFL, yes, that had a lot of juice, cheerleaders, all kinds of stuff, WWE, Pyro, Jesse Ventura, you had all that. But the quality of the football in that iteration of the league was just trash. I'll just say it. It was absolute trash. So I'll be interested, especially with the fact that there was a 4-week training camp as opposed to 3 weeks, because the offenses usually in spring football don't really gel until about week 4, week 5. I'll be interested with the extra training camp and all of the other things with the rule changes and all, whether that quality is going to be maintained within this game. This game, as I said, is going to set the tone for this entire league. You do not get a chance. You do not get a second chance to make a first impression. And I dare say that this is going to be the game that may very well determine as to whether or not this league gets a 4th season. So I am very excited about this game, very, very excited about tonight. And I might do a reaction video on this afterward, maybe at some point. So do definitely stay tuned for that. Now, there was a possibility that we were not going to see this game. And what I mean by that is that this game maybe would have been hosted in Louisville, but instead of the Birmingham Stallions, you would have the Idaho Stallions. There was the Boise Stallions, I should say. There was a whole article a while back about the possibility, and this was all before Mike Rapoli came in, that, we were going to explore the possibility of being in Boise. There were some talks about it, but then those kind of sort of were tabled, but those talks could come back. There was a lot of criticism of the Birmingham Stallions in terms of their attendance. Now, let's be real. There was a lot of success on the field with Birmingham. They won the league 3 times. Well, 2 times as USFL, 1 time as the UFL. But for all intents and purposes, I'm just going to say UFL. You guys, Birmingham, that is, won the championship 3 times. And yet the attendance was, let's be real about this. It was nothing really to write home about. And in fact, there was a decline year to year. In 2024, remember, 2023, USFL did not report numbers of attendance. The 2024 season of the UFL, 10,000, a little over 10,000 fans in attendance in Birmingham. 2025 was 8,800, a drop of 14%. That drop was the 3rd highest of any of the teams in the league. Now, league-wide, there was a 5% drop in attendance. And this was with very little marketing. There was about as much marketing of the league as there was the amount of gas when I put $5 in my tank the other day. I put a little more, but whatever. Stay with me here. So, look, Stallions fans, if there was, and I understand all of the protestations on Twitter and Reddit and some of the other places, but let's be honest, if the Chiefs were to have that kind of decline in attendance after winning, there will be alarm bells that will be ringing at 345 Park Avenue. So the possible relocation to Idaho, it was very fascinating to me. I mean, is it the most diverse city? Is it the most diverse state, really? The answer to that is no. But I am intrigued by some of the numbers. When I look at some of the population, I look at the some of the dollars, the median household income in this. If in fact Boise was in this league, it would have the second highest median household income of any of the teams in the league. I don't say that to be a snob. I don't say that to be a snob. I think everybody should have access to quality professional football. I do. But if the end game is to have investors in this, get these as franchises, then the numbers, the concern about decline in attendance, that would give any investor pause because, of course, as an investor, you have to be dispassionate. You have to have a return on your investment. I think if Kevin O'Leary were looking at this, he'd probably say, I'm out. And that kind of leads to something that, like we kind of sort of did here in terms of a little bit of a traffic light type of situation. We took all of the 8 teams, current teams in this league, and we wanted to see which teams were worth investing in. Going into the season, which teams are worth investing in? And right now, there are 2 teams that I would say give the green light to immediately if I were an investor. If I were an investor, there are 2 teams that are, I think, ready for investment. The first is St. Louis. Obviously, St. Louis, they have the best attendance of anybody in the league. The attendance has softened a little bit, but they could lose half of their audience. They could lose half of the audience that attends, and they would still have been, if you look at the numbers from last season, you can cut St. Louis in half, the number, and they would still have the highest attendance of anybody in the league. So really, really good stuff there. The second team that I would, if I were an investor, say yes, is ready to have an outside investor in it is DC. Second highest attendance in the league, really have embraced the team. The city has embraced the team since the 2020 iteration of the XFL. And what is fascinating to me, especially in DC, and especially really the whole DMV, not to be confused with the Department of Motor Vehicles, but the DMV, there is no shortage of choice. No shortage of choice. So the fact that, people attend Wizards games, for goodness sake, all right? So if people can attend Wizards games, then people can definitely attend DC Defenders games, and they do. And again, I will say that as with St. Louis, DC's attendance did soften a little bit, but still in totality, in an area that has no shortage of choice, DC is one that is just been fantastic, I think, for the league. So those are the 2 teams that I believe are ready for outside investors. Now, there are 5 teams in this that are more of a yellow light. They could be ready for investment at some point, but we need to see a little more for this. And I'll take the 2 teams in Texas, Dallas and Houston. Now, Dallas, they have had consistent attendance, very consistent attendance. Not exactly setting the world on fire, but the stability has been really good. You have the Spring King and Luis Perez in Dallas. More on that in a little bit in the pick'em segment, but definitely I like this consistency. Then you look at Houston. That is one that has been kind of sort of botched in the merger. You took the Roughnecks name, but then you have the Gamblers players, and I don't know. Houston is going to be an interesting one. I think that the coach over there's Kevin Sumlin is a lateral move from CJ Johnson. CJ had to go, but I think this pick for the coach is lateral. We'll see about that one. Talia Tagovailoa, I'm a little biased because I graduated from University of Maryland. If someone is able to do something with him as they did over at Maryland, then Houston could be a potential dark horse in this. So I don't know. We'll see. That's a market that has to be looked at very, very closely, because again, a lot of the moves that were made in the merger were not really so great as regards that market. The next team is Orlando. It's a returning market. Remember, there was the Guardians. Now that's the Storm. You've got Anthony Becht. He's been a really great ambassador, I think, not just for the Storm, but I also think for the entire league as a whole. And I think that is something that will definitely, definitely help move the Storm up in terms of the fortunes of being able to be invested in at some stage. My only thing with that is that it's very early. And the other thing I would also say as well is that there is kind of sort of that once bitten, twice shy sort of thing. Um, Again, a returning market. So, I mean, how many times are you going to come out? Here today, gone tomorrow. Here today, gone tomorrow. Remember the AAF? They had the Apollos. So again, we'll see what that looks like. But again, I think Anthony Becht is a very, very, very good ambassador. And I think if an investor were to pick them up, no doubt, I think they could work very, very, very well together with him. Columbus, it's very early, very, very early. Ted Ginn, Ohio State royalty, but that's a rookie coach. I do like Jalen McClendon in this. But again, I like it as a long-term play if/when Michigan is picked back up again. Remember that Michigan, by the way, was the only team in the UFL to have increased their attendance from year to year. So I think that Michigan has to be on the front running list of teams that need to be brought back in this if the league is going to expand. And then Louisville, finally, they are very early. I mean, tonight's stuff should be really, really good optics wise. I've always said this: intangibles matter, optics matter. But I'm not exactly keen on the roster taking remember they took the Showboats roster, and the Showboats were not particularly lighting the world on fire with their stuff over here. So we'll see what happens with Louisville. But I think that could very well, if the Louisville is to perform very well, that could be the breakout market in this league. It could be really a huge, huge breakout. And then a market that is just right now heading in, before the season started, was just not ready yet, is Birmingham, for all of the reasons that I had stated. But having said that, before you get your pitchforks out and everything else, Stallions fans, I will note that the fortunes have reversed seemingly for you guys as the Stallions faithful. Maybe it's Gucci Mane, maybe it's the needling from Mike Rapoli, maybe it is the better marketing. Yeah, maybe it is the better marketing that is really making the difference, a combination of all of these. But we'll see whether having Gucci Mane in there is going to be something that's really going to sustain Birmingham along with the quality of the football, or is this going to be a sugar high that comes crashing right down? But if I look at the map for Ticketmaster, they may very well have to open the other side. And the game for Birmingham, the home opener, is not until the 18th. And then when you look at the whole kickoff challenge, Birmingham actually was very, very high up, actually second as of the time that we're doing this. So, I mean, it is quite remarkable, quite a sight to behold. So we'll see again whether or not this is a sustained stuff here, or whether or not this will come crashing down like a sugar high. We'll see what happens. But now it's time to pick him. right, so with tonight's game on Fox, I always feel that this is kind of sort of like the Academy Awards in the sense that there is a bit of that dilemma where it's like who should win and then who actually does end up winning. And I personally, I like seeing new teams actually win only because I think that it helps the league out in the long term when you have newer teams buy in and buy in so early, and it's easier to do that with a win. But for me, when I look at this roster relative to the Stallions, I think it's clear that the Stallions have a huge, huge advantage here, and I don't think that this is going to be a close one. So I am taking the Stallions in this game tonight. Now, tomorrow's game, Defenders and Battlehawks, this is going to be on ESPN. That is going to be, I think, a huge game. If you do nothing else, especially if you're new to this league, yes, watch the game tonight, but also if you do nothing else, wake up, 12 o'clock Eastern, watch the Defenders and Battlehawks, huge rivalry game. I'm going to take experience in this case. I'm going to take the Defenders to win this. I think that the coaching is great with Shannon Harris. Having much of the coaching staff, that nucleus in there, I think is going to really, really make the difference. Ta'amu is, I think, clearly the best quarterback in this league, especially in light of everything that it has gone on just recently in this next game that I'm going to pick, and that's in the Gamblers Renegades game. Now, interestingly, Neuheisel has announced that Austin Reed is going to be the starting quarterback over the Spring King, Luis Perez. Now, it was said, it was reported that, Luis was not happy about that, that there's going to be opportunity for both quarterbacks to play, but it is very interesting that the Spring King is not going to start in this. And I still believe that it's going to be the Renegades that take this. I think that, again, when I look at the Gamblers and I see all the kind of sort of change that has happened over there, especially having the coach, I think Sumlin is just a lateral move from CJ Johnson. Now, CJ had to go. They went 5-5 when it was the Roughnecks. I think it was in spite of CJ, not because of him. So, again, I will take the Renegades in this. I'm not all in on the Gamblers quite yet. And lastly, the Storm. Aviator Storm game. I'm taking experience in this, just as I did with the Defenders game. I am taking experience here in this. I think the coach is fantastic. I like Jalen McClendon over at the Aviators. I like him. I think he has grown. It's been interesting that now he has a rookie coach, and with a rookie coach, just as he did with when he was at the Vipers, his completion percentage is less than what it is when you have an experienced coach. So again, I am taking the experience here. DTR, I believe, is going to make a lot of noise in this league. I saw the tape, very, very impressed with him. This is going to be a very, very good one, a good Sunday night game on ESPN. All right, finally, before we leave you and we get to the game, very, very exciting time to be alive when it comes to this third season of the UFL. I mean, there's a lot more local news outlets, national news outlets. ESPN, FS1 saw some segments on First Things First, Barstool, John Gruden. When you take all of this stuff together, there's just been way, way, way more attention in the run-up to this than there were in the entire 2024 and 2025 seasons of the UFL. And credit to Mike Rapoli for really doing everything to really juice this stuff up. I mean, this needed real juice, and he has really, thus far, has delivered on this. I was at the event in DC, and that was really the fan event in DC, and that was absolutely fantastic. I mean, shout out to everybody involved in that. You really felt that there's a bit of a buzz in there. DC is one of the two strongest markets in this league, so I mean that is, of course, to be expected. I had one of my friends come out to this, and he really enjoyed himself. It was absolutely tremendous, and the weather was great too. Um, so you have the energy, which is just so great, and that's more than I can say for when Daryl Johnston was in this league. Now, Daryl, look, I respect his career as a player for the Dallas Cowboys, but I think he learned a little too much from Jerry Jones in regards of running a team, running a league. You see, just like Jerry Jones, Daryl is an analog guy in the digital world. In a disruptor league like this, you need to have the energy of, say, a Spotify. Daryl is an 8-track. And when it comes down, when you looked at some of these decisions, and shout out to Greg Parks, by the way, who over at the UFL News Hub, Greg Parks did a fantastic, and I mean absolutely fantastic article over there. You should go over to UFL News Hub and check that stuff out about the whole kind of sort of dichotomy between the XFL side and the USFL side in terms of the merger, trying to keep everything even and so forth. At the end of the day, you have to do what is best for the long-term survival of the league. And clearly, that was the XFL's way of doing things. It really was, especially in terms of, as was pointed out in the article, the innovation. A little bit of a story about Daryl that I kind of sort of experienced a little bit to a certain extent, not directly, but in terms of an event that I attended with two league executives. I was at an event over at Nats Park with two league executives, and what they told me, and this was entirely unprompted, was that A, Daryl is a nice guy. That's number one. Daryl's a nice guy. But then number two, when it came to the football operations, Daryl, it was for him, from his point of view, it was his way or the highway. And you can't really have that kind of spirit when it comes to this. You really, really, really can't. And when you start to look at some of the decisions that were made in the first year of the league in that lens, especially the wrong kickoff that was used. Daryl was as wrong as two left shoes when it came to that. And it was not him just that made that decision. That there was the whole USFL contingent that made that decision. That okay, we're just going to use the traditional, what was the traditional kickoff. But then it was even made worse by the fact that the NFL just before had announced that they were going to use the XFL's kickoff, which I'm like, that was just an own goal. That was probably one of the worst decisions. That and using the Roughnecks brand, but taking the Gamblers players. Those are some of the worst decisions that were made in that first year of the merger. And I'm just going to say this: if I were running the league, honestly, if I were running the league at that time of the merger, Daryl would not have been there. I would not have put him in. I would have fired him. I would have fired every front office person of the USFL. It was not a good fit. And I do not think that Daryl and Mike Rapoli would coexist in the same room. I really, really don't. Rapoli, he's about juice. He's about innovation. He's about energy. Daryl, like when you look at the USFL, it was too much like the NFL light. Okay, it was too much NFL light, and that league, honestly, everything except gameplay, and just about everything except gameplay, it was the D student of the group project. It really was, and there was the reporting that happened even in the announcements. Even I think before the merger was announced, or when it was bandied about that there was going to be a merger. There was some reporting out there that there were going to be 12 teams, and then there were going to be 8 USFL teams and 4 XFL teams. Somebody who could really see, forget all the fandom, take your fandom blinders off for a second. Anybody who could really objectively see where these leagues were going knew that that stuff where it's like 8 USFL teams and 4 XFL teams, that was alternative facts right there. That was fake news. So in the end, for me, Daryl's stuff, I'm delighted he's gone. It's addition by subtraction. And when we start to look in a few weeks as to, and we'll revisit this, I think, at some point. I know it's kind of silly to relitigate the XFL versus USFL type of thing. I wouldn't have chosen UFL as the name of this league, by the way. I would have kept the XFL name. But I think Rapoli's moves will really transition the UFL to a real great brand identity, that edge that I think is very, very much needed. But I think that when I look at somebody like Daryl and the way that this has been, again, not a good fit. Rapoli said that the league was not doing enough to stand out. And now I think the question that will be asked once all said and done is that, was Daryl the person who truly held back the UFL from its full potential? You look at what's going to be happening tonight, sellout crowd out in Louisville. You look at some of the performers that are going to be part of these halftime shows. Do you think that Daryl Johnson would book any of these acts? We'll see. Jury's out on this one, but definitely we love to see the real juice that this league is starting to really come out with. And hopefully that continues. And I also hope that you will join us next week for another edition of Spring Football Has Sprung. We're back next Friday, a little earlier, probably around midday. So definitely stay tuned. The only way that you will be able to make sure that you see the episode when it drops is going to be subscribing and ringing the bell on this channel, youtube.com/the CSE channel. Subscribe, ring the bell, all that good stuff. Do follow us on all of the socials. And I do hope that you enjoy tonight's game, enjoy all of the weekend's games, and please, don't fumble in the end zone.